Right, so last time we finished off with the intro to cell structure where we learned what a cell is, what cytoplasm is, and all the organelles, and a basic definition or a basic function rather of all the organelles that are present. So, first off, I'll be starting off with double membraned organelles, and mitochondria is the first thing. So, that's what we'll be doing. So, mitochondria is the first organelle, right? So, I mentioned it is the powerhouse of the cell. Initially, I had mentioned that, and we'll see how. So, first of all, there's numerous mitochondria in your body cells. There are hundreds, right? And in the more active cells meaning liver and muscle cells which require constant energy, we have more. We have 1,000 to 2,000 mitochondria present in those body cells. So first of all, it's a double membrane. It's a double membrane organelle. Secondly, it's either circular or rod shaped, and we'll see how. So it has limited width, like 0.5 to 1 micrometer. And why it has limited width is to provide large surface area to volume ratio, and that helps in the efficient diffusion of gases, which is mainly oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is responsible for all the active energy changes that take place throughout the cell. So previously I mentioned how it's either circular or rod shaped. So we'll see how that is possible. So if you increase the width to its maximum level, which is 1 micrometer, and its length stays from anywhere between 1 to 10 micrometer, right? And the width is 0.5 to 1 micrometer. So if you increase the length, if the length is the highest and if the length is the lowest and the width is the highest, so it becomes circular shaped, right? Because it's 1 1, so dimensions is exactly the same. However, in this case, if the length is the highest, say the length is 10 micrometers and the width is either 0.5 or 1 micrometer, so this will become rod shaped, right? Because it's not equal length, so there'll be more length and then shorter width and then more length, right? So this is how it's either rod shaped or circular shaped. So this is the basic structure of a mitochondria, and I'll mention how everything is what it is. Right, so just studying the diagram, first we can see this outer white line that I've mentioned. So I'll just use a color that's not used here. I think almost everything's used here, so let's just use yellow. So the outer membrane, we can see first of all this is the outer membrane, the outer white thing that's made, and the red thing that's made is the inner membrane. So first of all, these are the two basic things. Now these foldings that you see right here, these are the cristae. These are the foldings of the inner membrane. And after the cristae there is the matrix, and the matrix is the ground liquid region having different varieties of enzymes which are involved in respiration as mitochondria's function suggests. So this part right here internally, everything here is the matrix, and these foldings are the cristae. Now what this is, this space in between this outer membrane and the inner membrane, this space right here is filled by the intermembranal space. So this is called the intermembranal space. These blue things that you see, the ones that are bigger, they are the loops of circular DNA. So we can say that mitochondria has its own DNA as well. And these smaller circles that you see, the many circles that you see, the one in yellow, are 70S ribosomes. So we'll study what 70S and 80S ribosomes are, but just to know, these are 70S ribosomes, and this is all that a mitochondria has inside. So first we'll see now the circular DNA that I just mentioned here and the 70S ribosomes. They're mainly involved in protein synthesis. I previously mentioned that ribosomes help ER in protein synthesis, right? So this is one way how they're involved in protein synthesis. And for example, enzymes in the matrix transport proteins. They all are proteins, right? Enzymes are proteins as well. So that's how they're involved in protein synthesis. Now the endosymbiont theory is what I'll be explaining you right now. So basically, what the endosymbiont theory states is that mitochondria developed from prokaryotic cells, or in terms bacteria, and I'll explain how. The few proofs that show this are that mitochondria have their own circular DNA, right? And and similar DNA, its own DNA is present in prokaryotic cells. uh, Prokaryote, right? That's for circular DNA. Then it states that the reproduction of mitochondria. So this is not just mitochondria; it's similar for chloroplast as well. But right now we're talking about mitochondria. So mitochondria and chloroplast, the reproduction uh, of themselves, reproduction occurs through fission, right? Now, fission, we don't need to get into the details of the fission, but it's the same process through which bacteria reproduce. And whereas eukaryotes, that are us, we reproduce through mitosis or meiosis, depending upon the type of cell. However, chloroplasts and mitochondria reproduce through fission, the same way as prokaryotic cells or bacteria reproduce. And the third proof to it is that it has a double membrane, and usually all the bacteria have a double membrane. So it states that um, mitochondria were once two bacteria, and over time they developed into what we know as mitochondria today. So this is what the endosymbiont theory is. Moving on to the functions of mitochondria, one of the most important parts. So first of all, it's mainly responsible for the production of ATP. Now, what ATP is adenosine triphosphate, which we'll be learning later on in this video only. So it's mainly responsible for the production of ATP through aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration we've studied in detail, the one that requires oxygen. And ATP acts as a source of energy for different cellular activities, and this source of energy is what helps with what gives it the name as powerhouse of the cell, or as I earlier mentioned, powerhouse of the cell, right? So this is the basic function of mitochondria. Now moving on, we can see the aerobic respiration. C6H12O6, which is organic food, we add oxygen to it, and the byproducts are, wait, so the byproducts as CO2, water, and then energy is released, right? So this is the amount of energy that's released, which we learned how it's converted. So it's ADP and pi. ADP is adenosine diphosphate, right? So it's 2. When another phosphate is added to it, so it becomes adenosine triphosphate, and this is the chemical energy, or the currency of energy that we require to for different cellular activities. So it's the source of energy. And ADP has heat energy worth 30.5 kilojoules. It's not necessary to know these amounts, but it's preferable. So energy is released, and then that energy from ADP and pi gets converted into ATP through hydrolysis, right? So let's talk about ATP. ATP, as I mentioned earlier, adenosine triphosphate. What ATP basically is, wait, let me just change the color. What ATP basically is, it's a universal energy currency. And why is this the only suitable form of universal energy currency? So it is because it provides direct energy for all metabolic processes in all life forms. Why is it the most ideal form of energy currency? So first of all, it's small. and water soluble, so it can easily be carried throughout the cells. So whatever I've mentioned in yellow is why is the justification of that statement I make in red. So it's small and water soluble. What helps, what return does it give? It helps it to be easily carried throughout the cell. Secondly, it's readily hydrolyzed to ADP and pi, right? What does this do? It helps provide instant energy, and the interconversion rate between ATP and ADP is enormous. Thus, it helps to get readily regenerated. Moving on, we can see the uses of ATP in the body. Um, and initially, first we studied the what ATP is and why it's an ideal energy currency, and now we're studying the functions or the uses of ATP, not the functions, obviously. So ATP is used in active transport because it's actively needing energy to perform an action, right? Secondly, it's used in muscular contraction. Anything that requires energy is where ATP will be required. So, muscular contraction and other cell movements. Initially, we studied how muscle and liver cells are the most important for mitochondria. So, this is one way we can justify muscular contractions require a lot of ATP, and other cellular movements, which include the endocytosis and the exocytosis. Uh, if you remember from active transport in the last chapter, the cell membrane chapter, we studied the NAK pump. That's an ideal example for where ATP can be used. We also did endo and exocytosis. That's an ideal example for where muscular contraction and cellular movements come place of in the usage of ATP. Then there's cell division and growth. We studied cell division as well in the gene control chapter. um, there's nerve impulse transmission. We have an idea of how that takes place, and that also requires ATP. And finally, there's different anabolic reactions, which are the DNA replication and the glycogen making. Cell division, you can head over to the gene control and the cell division chapter, and that's where we learn more about cell division. We learned about DNA replication in gene control, but cell division is yet to come. So these are all the uses of ATP in the body. So we can just recap once again. We started off with the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell. There are numerous in the body and more in the active cells, liver and muscle ones. They're either circular or rod shaped, and the width is important to remember. So is the length. So the length is either one anywhere between 1 to 10 micrometers, and the width is 0.5 to 1 micrometer. This is the shape of the mitochondria. We learned about matrix, cristae, 70S ribosomes, and the loops of circular DNA. Then we went on to discuss how circular DNA and the ribosomes are involved in protein synthesis. I described the endosymbiont theory, which states that mitochondria are evolved from bacteria. The functions of mitochondria were discussed. The main function is the production of ATP and through aerobic respiration. And ATP is the main source of energy for different cellular activities. We discussed aerobic respiration, the main formula of aerobic respiration, and how this ATP and ADP pi conversion takes place. ATP being the universal energy currency and provides because it provides direct energy for all the metabolic processes in all life forms. Why it's ideal? Because it's small and water soluble, thus it can be carried easily. It's readily hydrolyzed from ADP to ADP and pi, providing instant energy, and the interconversion rate between ATP and ADP is enormous, thus readily regenerated as well. Then we discussed the uses of ATP, and we've studied a few in the previous chapters as well. There's active transport, muscular contraction, cell division, growth, nerve impulse transmission, and the different anabolic reactions such as DNA replication and glycogen making. And that sums up our mitochondria heading. The next heading we'll be starting off in the next video.